How can being with that person is repulsive be said about my daughter on her wedding day? I heard it in a hallway, minutes before the ceremony. They thought I was just a quiet father with soft hands, but I chose the clean way to answer it. My name is Thomas Reed. I am 52. I work as a building inspector for the county. It is a quiet job. I read plans, I walk sites, I write reports, and I keep my voice low. People often think that means I have no spine. They confuse calm with weakness. I learned a long time ago that loud people get attention, but careful people get results. This story starts on the week of my daughter's wedding. Her name is Lena. She is 26. She is smart and kind, the type of person who remembers birthdays and brings soup when someone is sick. I raised her alone most of her life. Her mother left when Lena was small, and after that, it was just the two of us in a small house with a leaky kitchen sink. I did not give Lena a perfect life, but I gave her steady days. I showed up. I kept my promises. I thought that was enough. When Lena told me she was getting married, I was happy for her and worried at the same time. The man she chose was named Grant Keller. He was 29. He worked in sales. He had a smile that came fast and left fast. He was polite in the way people are polite when they want something. He knew how to shake hands and look into a camera. He knew how to say the right words in front of the right people. Many of Lena's friends liked him. Some of my family members liked him. They said he was confident and ambitious. They said Lena would have a good life with him. I wanted to believe that too. I told myself that every generation has a different style. I told myself not to judge a young man just because he talked a lot. Still, I kept noticing small things. Grant would talk about the wedding like it was a production, not a promise. He would talk about how it would look, not how it would feel. He would talk about our future in a way that sounded like a brand, not a home. Money became part of the problem early. I did not offer to pay for everything. I offered to help. Lena and Grant wanted a big wedding. They wanted a nice venue, a hotel block, a planner, flowers, and a long guest list. Lena did not ask for that. Grant pushed for it, and Lena tried to keep up. She said it was a once-in-a-lifetime moment. She said she did not want to regret it later. I have a simple rule with money. If I say yes, I follow through. If I say no, I do not argue for hours. I just say no. In the months before the wedding, I said yes more than I should have. I did it because Lena looked tired every time she talked about costs. I did it because I did not want my daughter to feel ashamed. I did it because I told myself this was my last big job as her father. Grant seemed to learn that pattern. He learned that I paid quietly. He learned that I did not make speeches about it. When a vendor asked for a deposit, Grant would tell Lena to ask me. If Lena hesitated, Grant would talk about how a real family supports each other. He said it in a friendly tone, like a compliment, but it always ended with me paying. 2 days before the ceremony, we all checked into the hotel near the venue. The hotel lobby was bright and cold, with shiny floors and soft music that made everything feel staged. Lena arrived with her bridesmaids. She held a garment bag like it was fragile glass. She hugged me, then pulled back and looked at my face like she was checking if I was okay. I told her I was fine. I said I was just tired from the drive. I told her she looked beautiful, even with no makeup and messy hair. She smiled, but it was the kind of smile that ends quickly. Grant arrived 10 minutes later with his friends. There were 3 of them around him, like a small team. The loudest one was named Cody Miles. Another was Blake Turner, who always had his phone in his hand. The third one drifted in and out, laughing at whatever Grant said, like he was paid to do it. They were friendly at first. They shook my hand. They said they were excited for the big day. Their eyes kept moving, like they were scanning the room. They looked at my clothes, my suitcase, my shoes. It was not open disrespect. It was more like a silent measurement. I have seen that look before. It is the look people give when they think they are above you. We walked to the front desk together. The clerk asked for names. Grant spoke quickly and confidently. He talked about the wedding like it was a big deal for the hotel. He said the staff should be ready for a large group. He said he expected everything to be perfect. The clerk nodded and smiled, but I could see a small tension around her eyes. While the clerk typed, Cody leaned closer to Grant and spoke softly. I could not hear every word, but I heard enough. Cody said Grant was lucky because he was marrying up. He said Lena was a good face to bring to events. He said Grant had done well for himself. Blake laughed and lifted his phone like he wanted a picture. I stood there, calm, hands at my sides. I did not step into their space. I did not demand respect. I simply watched. People like that often reveal more when you do not interrupt them. Once we had keys, we moved toward the elevators. Lena's bridesmaids stayed close to her like they were shielding her from the noise. Grant's friends spread out, taking up space. Grant walked in front like he was leading a group tour. Near the elevator, Grant's phone rang. He answered and stepped aside. I saw Lena watching him, her eyebrows tight. After he ended the call, he came back to us and said there was a small issue with one of the wedding upgrades. He said the venue had a premium lighting package and it would make the photos better. He said the planner recommended it. He said it was only a little more money. Lena asked who would pay for it. Grant looked at me. He did not ask directly. He just looked at me and paused, like the answer was obvious. I said I would talk to the planner first. I said I wanted to see what we already had. Grant's smile tightened. He said I was overthinking. He said it was a wedding, not a construction project. Cody laughed like that was the funniest thing in the world. I nodded and said I understood. I did not argue. I did not raise my voice. But inside, I noted the moment. I noted the way Grant framed my caution as a problem. I noted how his friends joined in without knowing details. They were not protecting Lena. They were protecting Grant's image of control. That night, I went to my room and unpacked slowly. My room was small and neat. I placed my suit jacket on a hanger. I lined up my shoes. I set my phone on the desk. It was the kind of routine that keeps my head clear. A few minutes later, there was a knock. Lena came in quietly. She sat on the edge of the chair and looked around like she was not sure where to rest her eyes. She told me Grant was stressed. She said he had a lot on his mind. She said his friends were just joking. I told her I was not upset about jokes. I told her I cared about how she felt. I asked her if she was happy. She said she was, but her voice was thinner than usual. She said planning had been harder than she expected. She said sometimes Grant made her feel like she was not doing enough. She said he wanted everything perfect. She said she did not want to disappoint anyone. I told her she did not need to earn love with perfection. I told her she had nothing to prove to me. I reminded her that this day was supposed to be about a promise, not a performance. She nodded, and for a moment she looked like my little girl again, the one who used to fall asleep on the couch during movies. Then her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and her shoulders tightened. She said Grant wanted her back in the hallway for a quick meeting with the planner. She stood up fast, like she had been trained to respond to that tone. Before she left, she hugged me and whispered that she was glad I was there. After she left, I sat on the bed and looked at my hands. They looked older than I felt. The skin was rough from years of work, years of fixing things. I thought about how many people treat fathers like background furniture at weddings. They want the checks and the smiles. They do not want the questions. Later, I went downstairs to the lobby to get coffee. I saw Grant and his friends near the bar area. They were talking to a small group of guests who had arrived early. Grant was playing the role of perfect host. He shook hands. He laughed at the right times. He touched shoulders like he owned the room. When he noticed me, he waved and called me over. He introduced me to people as Lena's father, then quickly moved on to talk about his own work and his own future plans. It was not a mistake. It was a pattern. He placed me in a small box and kept me there. Cody asked me what I did for a living. When I said building inspector, he made a face like it was a strange hobby. He said it sounded strict. He said I must enjoy telling people no. Blake smirked and looked at my clothes again. Grant laughed and said I was a simple man, but reliable. I said I liked my work because it kept people safe and kept buildings honest. I said rules exist for a reason. Grant nodded like he agreed, but his eyes showed impatience. I could tell he wanted to steer the conversation back to how important the wedding was and how important he was. I finished my coffee and excused myself. I did not need to win a social contest in a hotel lobby. I did not need to prove anything to young men who performed confidence like a job. I just needed to stay close to my daughter and keep my mind clear. Back in my room, my phone lit up again. A group message had been created for the wedding weekend. It included many names, including mine. The title was something like a groom crew chat. Several messages had already been sent. Most were jokes about schedules and drinks and photos. Then I saw one message that mentioned me. It was not open cruelty. It was a small, careless comment about me covering costs and not asking questions. A few laughing reactions followed it. It was the kind of thing people write when they think you will not push back. I did not respond. I set the phone down and stared at the wall for a moment. I felt something shift inside me, not anger, not panic. It was a quiet clarity, like a light turning on in a room. I thought about Lena walking quickly when Grant summoned her. I thought about Grant's pause when he looked at me for money. I thought about the laughter that followed, like it was a normal thing. I stood up and checked my suit again. I smoothed the fabric and made sure everything was ready for the morning. My actions were calm. My breathing was steady. On the outside, I was still the same quiet father who paid quietly and stood politely in the background. But inside, I started to see the weekend differently. This was not just a wedding. It was a test of character, and I was watching the answers appear in small moments. The next morning, I woke up early, the way I always do. Hotel curtains do not block all the light, and my body does not sleep in anymore. I sat on the edge of the bed and listened to the hallway. Doors opened. People laughed. Someone rolled a luggage cart. The hotel already felt like a stage. I opened my phone and read the group chat again. I did it slowly. I looked at who reacted, who wrote, and who stayed quiet. I did not answer. I simply saved the message in my mind, the way I save a detail on a work site. Then I went back to my room desk and opened my small notebook. It is a habit from my job. When something feels off, I write down time, place, and who was there. It keeps me honest later. It keeps my memory clean. While I wrote, my mind went back to when I first met Grant. Lena brought him to a small cafe near our house about 2 years earlier. I arrived early and chose a table near the window. Lena always loved that cafe because it had warm lights and quiet music. She said it felt safe. Grant arrived with a firm handshake and a big smile. He spoke fast. He asked me about my work, and he said he respected people who build things. He told me he was focused on growth. He told me he wanted a family one day. He said Lena was special. I remember thinking he was polished. I also remember feeling that he talked like he was selling something. When Lena spoke, he often finished her sentences. He did it with a friendly tone, like it was teamwork, but it made me watch him more closely. After that first meeting, Lena seemed excited. She told me Grant made her feel seen. She said he was confident in ways she was not. She said he pushed her to take bigger steps. I wanted her to be happy. I did not want to be the kind of father who says no to everything. So I stayed neutral. I listened, I asked simple questions. I watched how Grant acted when nobody was praising him. At first, Grant was careful around me. He called me sir. He offered to help carry things. He showed up on time. He spoke about respect and commitment. If someone had asked me then, I would have said he was a decent young man with a strong personality. The shift happened slowly. It always does. The first time I felt it, it was during a family dinner at my house. I cooked simple food, nothing fancy. Lena offered to help, but Grant told her to sit. He said she should rest because she worked hard. It sounded kind. Then he turned to me and started talking about the wedding, even though they were not engaged yet. He said he would not settle for a small event. He said a wedding is a public statement. He said people remember how you launch your life together. I told him that I thought a marriage matters more than a party. I said the two of them should choose what they can afford and what feels right. Grant smiled and said he agreed, but he also said he wanted the best for Lena. He said she deserved a big day. Later that night, after Grant left, Lena told me he was just dreaming out loud. She said it was harmless. I nodded, but I remembered the way Grant looked when I mentioned affordability. His smile stayed, but his eyes sharpened. A few months later, Grant proposed. Lena showed me the ring with shaking hands. She looked joyful and nervous at the same time. She asked me what I thought. I told her I was proud of her and I was happy she found someone she loved. I also asked her if she felt respected in the quiet moments, not just the big ones. She said yes, but she answered fast, like she had practiced the line. Then wedding planning began, and the pressure began with it. Grant took control of many choices. He acted like it was normal. He picked venues, photographers, and menus. He talked about brand colors and guest experience. He used words like investment and upgrade. Lena tried to keep up, but I could see the stress in her face. When Lena had concerns, Grant would talk like she was being negative. He would say she needed to trust him. He would say he had a vision. He would say he was doing it for both of them. Lena would come to my house after work and sit at my kitchen table. She would scroll through messages and look tired. She would say the planner needed deposits. She would say the venue had new fees. She would say Grant was upset because one detail was not perfect. I would ask how much. She would hesitate, then tell me. I would breathe in, look at my budget, and decide what I could do. I never told her she was a problem. I told her I loved her. I told her we would find a way. That is how it starts. One yes becomes a habit becomes an expectation becomes a rule that nobody says out loud, but everyone follows. Grant's friends appeared more often as the wedding got closer. Cody was the loudest. Blake was the one who watched everything. They acted like the wedding was also their weekend. They teased Lena in small ways and called it humor. They said she was lucky. They said Grant was a catch. They said she should not be so sensitive. Once, at a restaurant, Lena asked Grant to lower his voice because people were staring. Grant laughed and said she worried too much. Cody added that Lena was always trying to manage the room. Blake looked up from his phone and said, "The best photos happen when people stop controlling everything." Lena smiled and went quiet. I noticed her fingers pressing into her napkin. I noticed she did not touch her food much after that. Another time, we met at a bridal shop for a fitting. I waited in the lobby area while Lena was in the back. Grant arrived late with Cody. Grant looked at his watch and said this was taking too long. He said he had calls to make. He said he was paying for a lot and needed the day to run efficiently. He said it in front of staff. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. He used the setting like a tool. People get embarrassed in public, and they comply faster. Lena came out and asked what was wrong. Grant smiled and said nothing was wrong. He said he was just thinking about logistics. He told her she looked nice. Then he turned away to answer a call. I watched Lena's face. Her eyes followed him like he was the main light in the room. I hated that feeling, not because I wanted to control her, but because I could see she was adjusting herself to fit someone else. It kept going. A month before the wedding, Grant invited me to a meeting with the planner. It was at a small office near downtown. Grant arrived with a folder and a confident tone. He spoke over the planner sometimes, like he knew better. He also spoke for Lena, like she did not need to speak. When the planner mentioned a payment schedule, Grant turned to me again. He did not ask directly. He just paused and looked at me, like I was part of the package. I told him I would help with what I had already agreed to. I told him any new changes needed to be discussed first. Grant smiled and said, "Of course." Then later, in the parking lot, he told Lena that I was being difficult. Lena repeated his words to me a week later, trying to soften them. She said Grant thought I was cautious. She said he did not understand my style. She said I worried too much. I told her being careful is not a flaw. I told her careful people keep homes standing. She smiled, but she looked unsure, like she was balancing two worlds. I started to feel like I was not just helping my daughter. I was also protecting her from a quiet kind of control. It was not loud. It was not obvious. It was a steady push, a steady correction, a steady message that said Grant's way was the only way. During that time, I also saw how Grant treated people he did not need. He was warm to people with status. He was cold to service staff when things were slow. He was patient when a manager was watching. He was sharp when he thought nobody important would notice. I did not confront him. I kept notes. I kept my tone neutral. I told myself to stay focused on Lena. 2 days before the wedding, I drove to meet my friend Evan Cross at a small diner. Evan is 41. He works with numbers for a living. He sees patterns the way I see building flaws. He does not talk in circles. He says what he sees. We sat in a booth with coffee and simple food. I told him I felt uneasy. I told him I felt like I was being pulled into something I could not control. Evan listened, then asked a few short questions. He asked who paid for what. He asked whose name was on which bookings. He asked if Lena seemed happy or just busy. I answered honestly. Evan looked down at his cup and then told me something that made my stomach tighten. He said he had bumped into Grant and Cody at a bar a few weeks earlier. Evan said he did not join them, but he heard enough to understand their tone. He said Grant talked about the wedding like a transaction. Evan said Grant spoke about me like a predictable source of money. He said Grant claimed I would cover things no matter what because I always did. Evan did not say it with drama. He said it like a fact. He also said that people like that respect one thing in the end. He said they respect consequences. I told Evan I did not want revenge. I said I just wanted my daughter safe and steady. Evan nodded and said safety sometimes requires firmness. He said I should stop assuming the best about someone who keeps using me as a tool. When I left the diner, I sat in my car for a while before turning the key. I watched people walk in and out. I watched a couple laugh over a small dessert. I felt an odd calm settle in me. I realized something simple. I had been trying to keep peace by paying and staying quiet. But peace built on silence is not real peace. It is just delay. Back at the hotel, I saw Lena in the hallway. She was carrying small bags and trying to do 10 things at once. Grant called her name from across the lobby, and she changed direction fast. I watched her go. I watched how Grant did not walk to her. He made her come to him. That night, alone in my room, I opened my notebook again. I wrote down what Evan said. I wrote down what I had seen. I did not write it like a story. I wrote it like a report. I was still calm. I still planned to show up and smile for my daughter. But I stopped telling myself that all of this was normal. I stopped treating small disrespect as harmless. I understood that some people do not change because you love them. They change because the world finally tells them no. The day of the ceremony started like a schedule, not like a celebration. The hotel hallway smelled like perfume and hot hair tools. Doors opened and closed all morning. Someone rolled a cart of white towels. Someone knocked and called out room numbers. Every few minutes, a phone tone went off like a timer. I kept my movements slow. I wore simple clothes and stayed out of the way. I did not want Lena to feel me hovering. I wanted her to feel steady. When I passed people in the hallway, I smiled and nodded. I listened more than I spoke. Lena's prep room was on the second floor of the venue, in a quiet corner with a small couch and a big mirror. I stopped by only once in the morning. I asked if she had eaten. I asked if she needed water. I asked if she had a minute to breathe. She said she was fine, but she looked tight around the eyes. Her hands moved fast, always fixing something, a loose strand of hair, a bracelet, a strap. Her friends circled her like a small storm of help. They meant well, but the room still felt heavy. Grant's name came up again and again. Someone said he was running late. Someone said he wanted different music timing. Someone said he wanted a new photo setup in the hallway. Lena did not argue. She simply nodded, like every change was normal. I told her she did not have to carry everyone's stress. I reminded her that this was her day too. She gave me a quick smile, then glanced at her phone again, like she was waiting for a signal. I left after a few minutes. I did not want to add pressure. I walked down the corridor and looked at the venue from a distance. The place was beautiful. Soft lights, clean wood, white flowers, chairs lined up in perfect rows. It looked like an image from a magazine. But I have inspected enough buildings to know something. A place can look perfect and still have weak joints. A few hidden cracks can change everything. I helped a staff member move a small sign near the entrance. It was nothing important, just a welcome board. I did it because I was there, and because it kept my hands busy. The staff member thanked me with tired eyes. She looked like she had been managing problems all week. I asked where the planner was. She pointed toward the service corridor behind the main room. I walked that way, staying calm. The service corridor was narrow and plain. It smelled like cleaning spray and coffee. Boxes were stacked near the wall. A few cords ran along the floor, taped down neatly. I noticed small cameras in corners. Many venues have them. They protect property and staff. Most guests do not see them. I always see them. Near the corridor, I saw Nora Patel, the planner. She was focused, holding a clipboard, moving like someone who could count seconds. I asked her about the lighting package that Grant mentioned the night before. I said I wanted to confirm what was already included and what was not. Nora gave me a careful look. She said Grant had requested extra items more than once. She said she tried to keep things clear, but he kept changing details. She said some requests were made in a way that sounded final, even when they were not. I asked if Lena approved those changes. Nora hesitated, then said Lena usually agreed after the fact. She said Lena looked tired when those messages came in. Nora did not criticize Lena. She simply stated what she saw. I thanked her. I told her I was not trying to cause trouble. I said I just wanted everything fair and clear. Nora nodded like she understood. She said the venue director would handle policy issues if needed. She said her job was to keep things moving, not to referee. As I walked back toward the main hallway, I saw Grant's friends pass by. Cody walked first, laughing too loudly for the space. Blake followed, eyes down on his phone, thumb moving fast. Another friend trailed behind them, carrying a garment bag. They did not greet me. Or maybe they did, but it was a quick glance, the kind that says you are not part of the main group. I stayed calm and let them pass. I did not want a conflict in a hallway. I checked the time. The ceremony was still a short while away. Guests would arrive soon. The venue felt like a quiet machine warming up. I went outside to the courtyard for air. The courtyard had trimmed plants and a small fountain. It was peaceful for a moment. I sat on a bench and breathed slowly. My mind kept replaying the group chat message from the hotel. It also replayed Evan's words from the diner. I did not like how well those pieces fit together. After a few minutes, my phone buzzed. Lena asked if I could bring her a small item from my car. I said yes. I walked to the parking area, found the item, and returned. It was a simple task, but it helped me feel useful without being in the way. On my way back inside, I saw Ms. Alden, the venue events director. She stood near the entrance with a headset and a calm face. Her calm looked practiced. She greeted me politely. I told her thank you for hosting today. She nodded and said they wanted everything smooth. Her eyes moved briefly toward the hallway, then back to me. It was a small glance, but I noticed it. People who manage events notice trouble before it becomes public. I went upstairs and delivered the item to Lena's room. I kept my voice low. I told her I would be nearby if she needed me. She said thank you. Her eyes held mine for a second longer than usual, like she wanted to say something but could not. I left again. Soon after, I walked down the main hallway toward a side door that led to a quiet area. The hallway was wider than the service corridor, with framed photos on the walls and soft carpet. It was a place where guests might wander to find restrooms or water. I did not plan to be there at that exact moment. I was simply moving through the building, making sure I knew where things were. That is another habit from my job. If something changes, you do not want to be lost. As I approached a bend in the hallway, I heard voices ahead. They were not loud enough to echo through the venue, but they were loud enough to carry in a quiet corridor. I slowed down without thinking. I did not want to interrupt whatever it was. I assumed it was staff. Then I recognized Grant's voice. I also recognized Cody's laugh. I stopped near the corner, still out of sight. I did not do it to spy. I did it because something in their tone felt careless. Grant was talking about Lena. He was not speaking with respect. He was speaking like she was a problem he had accepted for a benefit. He described her as someone who tried too hard. He said she was difficult in a way that made him look good for putting up with it. Cody laughed and encouraged him. Then Grant said something that froze me in place. He said being with her felt repulsive. The word hit me like cold water. I felt heat rise in my face, but my body stayed still. I did not move. I did not speak. I listened. Blake added comments about how Lena would do anything to keep the wedding on track. He said she would smile no matter what. He said she was worried about looking foolish in front of guests. Cody said she would never walk away now, because the day was too public. Grant agreed. He said the day would go forward because everyone would pressure Lena to keep it moving. He said the father would also push it forward because the father paid for too much to stop it. He said I cared about reputation and would not risk embarrassment. They spoke like they were discussing a plan, not a marriage. In that moment, I understood something important. This was not only about Grant being rude, this was about Grant believing he could control my daughter through pressure and image. It was about his friends supporting that belief like a team. My first instinct was to step out and confront him. That is a normal human feeling, but I did not follow it. I have seen what happens when people explode in public. The loudest person wins the moment. The calm person looks unstable. The story becomes about tone, not truth. So I did not explode. I did not rush. I simply waited and let them keep talking long enough to show who they were. I also noticed something else. On the ceiling near the corner, a small camera faced down the hallway. A tiny red light blinked faintly. The camera was not hidden. It was just not obvious unless you look for it. I took a slow breath. My mind became clear in a strange way, like everything sharped into focus. I knew I had to act, but not with noise. I had to act in a way that could not be turned into a joke later. I made a small sound. It was not a shout. It was not a threat. I lightly tapped the metal frame of a wall sign with my knuckle. It was just enough to change the air in the hallway, just enough to make people pause and look. The voices stopped. Footsteps shifted. Grant and his friends moved toward the corner, curious, relaxed, like they expected a staff member or a guest. When Grant stepped closer, he saw me. His face changed quickly. He replaced his careless expression with a polite one, as if he could switch masks like a jacket. He asked if I needed something, in a tone that sounded friendly. Cody grinned like the whole thing was funny. Blake held his phone low, screen facing up, like it was ready. I kept my voice even. I said I was just checking where everything was before guests arrived. I said I wanted today to run smoothly for Lena. I did not accuse. I did not argue. I simply looked at Grant and let silence sit for a second. Grant filled the silence with charm. He said he appreciated my help. He said he knew this weekend was a lot for me. He said everything would be fine. I nodded and said I understood. I said I trusted the schedule. I said I hoped everyone remembered why they were here. Grant smiled. Cody laughed again. Blake's eyes flicked toward the camera on the ceiling for a moment, then back to his phone. That small glance told me he knew cameras existed. He just did not care. I stepped aside and let them pass. I did it on purpose. I wanted them to think the moment was over. I wanted them to relax again. People reveal themselves when they think they have won. As they walked away, I stayed still for a few seconds. My heart beat harder than usual, but my face stayed calm. I felt that quiet shift again, the same one I felt the night I read the group chat. It was not rage, it was decision. I walked straight to a quiet area near the service corridor and took out my notebook. My hands did not shake. I wrote down time and place. I wrote down who was present. I wrote the exact words I heard. I wrote it like a report, not like a diary. Then I put the notebook away and looked down the hallway again. I thought about Lena in her prep room, trusting a man who spoke about her that way. I thought about how the day was designed to trap her with pressure. I thought about how Grant's friends believed I would protect the image of a wedding more than I would protect my daughter. They were wrong. I did not yet know the full shape of what I would do, but I knew I would not solve it with a scene and a raised voice. I would solve it through the systems people like Grant respect. Policies, records, responsibility, consequences that do not depend on who shouts the loudest. I took one more slow breath, placed my phone back in my pocket, and walked toward the main area where guests were starting to arrive. My posture was the same as before. My face was neutral. But inside, I was no longer the quiet father they thought they could manage. After I wrote everything down, I did not stand there and stare at the wall. I did not chase them. I did not try to win a hallway argument. I walked away at the same speed I had been walking before. I knew one thing. If I started a loud scene, Grant would turn it into a story about me being difficult. He would make himself the calm one. He would make Lena the person who had to choose sides in front of everyone. I would not put my daughter in that position. I moved toward the service corridor again, because it was the one place in the building that felt real. In the main rooms, everything was soft lights and smiles. In the service corridor, people worked. People followed rules. People cared about time and safety. That mattered. Nora Patel was near a table where staff kept water and small supplies. She looked up when she saw me. I kept my voice low and steady. I asked her if she had a minute. She said she did, but she also said they were running tight on time. I told her I understood. I told her I was not trying to disrupt anything. I said I had heard something in a hallway that made me concerned. I did not repeat the whole conversation. I did not need to. I told her I heard Grant speaking about Lena in a way that was not respectful. I told her it happened near the bend in the main hallway. I told her it was close to one of the cameras. Nora's face stayed professional, but her eyes shifted slightly, like she knew exactly which camera I meant. She asked what I wanted. I told her I wanted two things. First, I wanted Lena protected from sudden pressure and public embarrassment. Second, I wanted the venue to keep anything important from being lost or erased if a problem happened later. Nora nodded slowly. She said she could not take sides. She said she could only follow policies and keep the schedule moving. She said if there was a serious issue, the venue director handled it, not her. I asked who the venue director was and where I could find her. Nora pointed toward a side station near the entrance where staff wore headsets. She told me the director was Ms. Alden. She also said Ms. Alden was strict about how people behaved on the property. Nora said the venue had rules and they enforced them when needed. That was the first time someone said it out loud. Rules, enforcement, not feelings, not opinions. That was the language Grant respected, even if he pretended he did not. I thanked Nora and walked toward the side station. Ms. Alden stood with a tablet and a calm expression. She looked like someone who had handled every kind of wedding problem before. When I approached, she gave me a polite smile and asked if everything was going well. I told her I had a concern. I told her I wanted to speak quietly, away from guests. I did not want a scene. I wanted to be respectful to her staff. Ms. Alden looked at me for a second, then nodded. She stepped a few feet to the side where the noise from the entrance was lower. I explained the situation in simple terms. I said I heard the groom speaking in a way that made me worry about emotional safety and the dignity of the bride. I said it happened in a hallway that had a camera. I said I was not asking her to punish anyone right now. I said I wanted her to be aware, and I wanted the venue's records preserved if they were needed. Ms. Alden did not react with surprise. She reacted with careful attention. She asked for the approximate time. She asked where I was standing. She asked who else I saw. I answered. I gave her the facts, not my emotions. She said the venue did have cameras in certain corridors. She said she could not show or share anything without proper process. She said she could make a note and ensure nothing was overwritten by routine systems. She also said the venue had policies about harassment and disruptive conduct. I told her I appreciated that. I said I wanted today to stay calm, and I wanted Lena treated with respect. Ms. Alden said she understood. She said she would speak with Nora and ensure staff were alert. She also said if anything escalated in a public way, she would act according to venue policy. I thanked her again. I walked away feeling something I had not felt all morning. I felt supported by structure, not by sympathy, by structure. From there, I went to the florist back room. I had noticed earlier that there were extra boxes and extra ribbon. I wanted to know why. I did not want surprises landing on Lena like another weight. The florist's assistant was busy with pins and stems. I asked if the lead florist had a minute. A woman in a black apron stepped over, hands full of small tools. She looked tired, but she listened. I asked if there were any last-minute changes. I asked if anything had been ordered that was not part of the original plan. She told me there had been changes from the groom's side. She said they wanted extra arrangements for photos and a special display near the entrance. She said those requests came in late. She said they were told payment would be handled, but the message was unclear about who exactly. I asked if Lena approved the changes. The florist hesitated and said Lena's name was attached to one message, but it looked like someone else wrote it. She said it was common for couples to share accounts, so she could not be sure. She said she just followed what the planner confirmed. I nodded. I did not ask for screenshots. I did not ask for papers. I did not want anything on the table, yet I just wanted to understand the pattern. I thanked her and told her to keep all communications in one place. I said if anyone asked for changes, they should go through Nora. I said it would protect the florist, too. The florist agreed quickly, like she was relieved someone wanted clarity. I left the back room and walked toward the courtyard again. I needed air. I also needed to keep my face neutral. In an event like this, people notice expression more than words. If I looked angry, it would spread like smoke. Outside, the courtyard fountain made a steady sound. I sat on the bench again. I opened my phone and looked at my recent calls. I found Maris Shaw's number. She was the attorney I trusted. She was not dramatic. She did not promise miracles. She spoke in clear steps. I called her. When she answered, I kept my voice low. I told her I needed guidance today, not next week. I told her I'd overheard the groom saying something cruel about my daughter, minutes before the ceremony. I told her I wanted to protect my daughter and handle everything properly. Maris asked a few short questions. She asked about payments, who signed what, and what kind of venue rules might apply. She asked if there were any records, like cameras or messages. I told her there might be a venue camera in the hallway. I told her the planner and venue director were aware now. I told her I was keeping notes with time and place. Maris told me to keep doing that. She told me to stay calm and avoid direct confrontation. She told me to let neutral authorities do their jobs when possible. She also told me not to make threats. She said I should focus on facts, not emotions. I told her that was my plan. Before we ended the call, Maris told me she could be ready to act quickly if needed. She told me there were lawful options to stop a ceremony if it became unsafe or deceptive. She said timing mattered. She said I should choose a moment where the truth could not be twisted. I said I understood. I ended the call and sat still for a few seconds. Then my phone buzzed with another message from the group chat. It was a new joke from Cody, aimed at the schedule. It included a comment about how everything would happen no matter what, because the bride would not risk embarrassment. Several people reacted with laughing icons. Grant reacted too. I did not respond. I took a screenshot for myself and saved it in a folder. Then I turned my phone face down. I returned inside and moved quietly through the lobby area. Guests were arriving now. People hugged, people took photos. Lena's relative smiled and asked where she was. I answered politely and said she was getting ready. I saw Grant near the entrance. He wore a suit that fit well and a smile that looked practiced. He was shaking hands and making short jokes. His friend stood behind him like a small wall. When Grant noticed me, he stepped closer and lowered his voice. He said he hoped I was not stressed. He said weddings bring out emotions in parents. He said everything was on track. I told him I was fine. I told him I wanted Lena to have a calm day. Grant nodded and said he agreed. Then he added that there was still a small payment issue with the upgrades. He said it needed to be handled before the ceremony started. He said it would be easier if I took care of it right away. I looked at him and kept my face neutral. I told him I would speak with Nora and confirm what was actually required. I told him I would not do anything in a rush. Grant's smile tightened again. He said time was limited. He said he did not want the day slowed down by details. I told him details are what keep things honest. Grant laughed lightly like it was a joke, but his eyes showed irritation. He stepped back and returned to greeting guests, acting like our conversation never happened. I walked away and went toward the bank lobby in my mind, not with my feet yet. Money was a lever Grant believed he controlled through pressure. I needed to remove that illusion. I left the venue for a short time and drove to a nearby bank branch. I did not go in like a man running from a problem. I went in like a man handling routine business. The bank lobby was clean and quiet. The staff greeted me politely. I asked to review a few account settings. I asked about alerts and payment limits. I asked about how quickly certain transfers could happen and what required extra verification. I did not raise my voice. I did not mention the wedding. I kept it simple. The banker helped me set a few safeguards. I made sure no one could push a sudden payment through in my name without my direct confirmation. I did not feel pride. I felt calm. This was not punishment. It was boundary. When I returned to the venue, I felt more steady. The main ceremony space was almost ready. Chairs were full, soft music played. Nora moved like a clock, signaling people into place. Ms. Alden stood near the side, watching the room like a guard of order. I found Nora and told her quietly that I would not approve any new changes today. I told her any financial questions needed to go through proper confirmation, not pressure. Nora nodded. She said she understood. She said she would keep things clean. Then I went to check on Lena. In the bride's prep room, Lena stood in her dress. Her friends adjusted small details. She looked beautiful, but her eyes looked far away. When she saw me, she tried to smile. I asked if she was okay. I asked if anyone had said anything that made her feel small today. She hesitated. Then she said Grant had been short with her. She said he kept reminding her how much money was involved. She said he told her not to mess anything up in front of guests. I kept my voice steady. I told her she was not a problem to manage. I told her she was a person and she deserved respect. I told her she did not have to push herself through something just because people were watching. Lena swallowed hard. She asked what I meant. I did not dump the hallway words on her right there. Not in that room, not with people around her. I told her I had heard something that concerned me, and I was handling it properly. I told her my job today was to protect her dignity, not to protect a schedule. She nodded slowly, and I saw fear and relief mix in her face. She asked if everything would be okay. I told her I would not let anyone trap her with pressure. I stepped out of the room and closed the door gently. In the hallway, I paused and listened to the building. The ceremony music was getting louder. People were moving into seats. Grant's voice floated through the air, confident and bright. They still thought I was the quiet father who would pay and stay silent. They still thought I cared more about how it looked than how it felt. I walked toward the main ceremony space with my shoulders relaxed and my expression calm. I was not rushing. I was positioning myself where the truth would matter most. I stayed in the hallway for a moment after leaving Lena's room. I did not rush. I did not pace. I just stood near a wall and watched people pass. A wedding is full of motion, but most of it is not important. People move because they feel nervous. They move because they want control. I have learned that if I move too fast, I start reacting instead of choosing. I checked my phone again. I did not open the group chat. I did not need more noise. I looked at the time and the schedule that Nora had shared earlier. I noted the minute guests would be seated. I noted the minute the music would begin. I noted when the doors would close and when the aisle would clear. I also checked a small folder I had created on my phone. It held simple things. Notes with time and place. A few saved messages. Nothing dramatic. Nothing that would make sense to strangers. But it made sense to me. It was my way of staying grounded in facts. Nora walked past and gave me a quick look. I stepped toward her and asked if she had a moment. She nodded and led me a few steps into the service corridor, away from guests. I told her I wanted one clear agreement for the rest of the day. I said there would be no new upgrades, no new add-ons, and no last-minute changes that created confusion. I said any request needed to go through her, and she needed to confirm it with both people in the couple, not just one side. I said I wanted it documented in her planning notes, the way she normally did things. Nora listened without interrupting. Then she said she already had concerns about last-minute changes. She said she had staff ready to hold the line. She said she would not let anyone pressure a vendor or a family member into a decision in the final hour. I thanked her. I asked her to inform Ms. Alden as well. I said I wanted the venue aligned with the same idea. If something turned into a problem, it needed to be handled by policy, not by emotions. Nora said she understood. She said she would speak with Ms. Alden right away. I walked back toward the entrance. Ms. Alden was still there, calm as stone, headset on, scanning the room like she was reading the air. I waited until she finished speaking to a staff member, then I stepped forward. I told her I appreciated her professionalism. I told her I was trying to prevent a public conflict. I said my goal was to protect the dignity of the bride and keep her safe from pressure. I asked her, indirectly, what the venue could do if a person behaved in a way that violated venue rules. Ms. Alden did not show surprise. She said the venue had a code of conduct in the contract and staff were trained to respond when conduct crossed a line. She said the venue could pause the event if necessary. She said the venue could restrict access to prep rooms if they believed someone was causing harm or disruption. She said everything depended on facts and timing. I told her I understood. I said I had already shared the corridor location and approximate time of what I heard. I said I would not ask her to make a decision without proper process. I said I only wanted her ready if the situation became clear. Ms. Alden nodded. She said she would keep staff alert. I stepped away and returned to the courtyard for a short breath. Outside, the air felt cooler. The fountain sound made it easier to think. I sat down and let my shoulders drop. In my mind, I rehearsed one thing. I did not rehearse a speech full of emotion. I rehearsed a simple approach. If I needed to act, I would speak only in facts. I would not insult anyone. I would not argue. I would not chase the loudest person. I would choose a moment where neutral people could see what was happening and respond. My phone buzzed again. It was a message from Evan. He asked if I was okay. I told him I was steady. I told him I might need him available later, but I would not explain details by text. Evan replied that he understood and that he was close by. I put my phone away and returned inside. Guests filled the main ceremony space now. The room looked softer with people in it. The seats were almost full. The aisle was clear. The music was low. People leaned toward each other and spoke in whispers. I could see phones in hands. Some people were already filming the decorations. It was normal for this time. It was also useful to remember. In rooms like this, many things get seen. I found my assigned seat near the front. It was on the left side, close to the aisle. I could see the doorway where Lena would enter. I could also see the side area where staff stood. I could see Ms. Alden's station from that angle if I turned my head. Grant was near the front as well, moving between small groups. He shook hands, smiled, and nodded. He looked like a man in control. He played the part well. Cody and Blake stood a few steps behind him. Cody joked with guests. Blake held his phone and checked his screen often. He looked like someone waiting for the best moment to capture a reaction. I saw him glance around the room, not at the decorations, but at people's faces. Grant noticed me and walked over. His smile stayed in place. He asked if everything was handled. He said he did not want any stress before the ceremony. I told him I wanted today to be respectful and calm. I told him the schedule was tight and pressure would only create mistakes. Grant nodded like he agreed. Then he mentioned the upgrades again, and he said he hoped I would not slow things down. He said the venue needed a final confirmation. I told him Nora would handle it, and I would not be rushed into new costs today. I told him the day had enough moving parts already. Grant's smile tightened for a second, then returned. He said he understood. He patted my shoulder lightly, like he was managing me. Then he walked away. I watched him go and felt nothing in my face change. Inside, I felt more certain. Grant was not concerned about Lena's comfort. He was concerned about control. If control slipped, he would push harder. A staff member came through the aisle and asked guests to silence phones. The request was polite. The meaning was strict. The room began to settle. People shifted in their seats. Someone coughed. Someone adjusted a jacket. Nora moved quickly down the side, checking details. She nodded at me once. It was small, but it told me she was paying attention. I stood up quietly and stepped out to the side hall. I did not want to be trapped in a seat if I needed to move. I did not want to stand and block the aisle later. I wanted to be close enough to act, but not in anyone's way. Near the side hall, I saw Lena's bridesmaid, one of her closest friends, coming from the prep area. Her face looked pale. She saw me and slowed down. She did not say much. She simply told me Lena was shaking. She said Lena was trying to breathe, but she looked scared. She said Grant had been short with Lena again, and Lena had gone quiet. I asked if Lena wanted me there. The bridesmaid said Lena wanted to see me, but she did not want attention. She said Lena was afraid of creating a scene. I nodded and walked toward the bride's prep room, keeping my steps quiet. When I entered, the room felt warmer than before, filled with people and nervous energy. Lena stood near the mirror. The dress was perfect. Her hair was set. Her hands, however, were not steady. She held a small tissue and kept folding it. She looked at me and tried to smile. Her eyes were wet. She did not fully break down. She was holding herself together with effort. I walked closer and kept my voice low. I asked her one direct question. I asked if she wanted to go through with this today. Lena swallowed and looked down. She did not answer right away. Then she said she felt trapped by the day. She said so many people had come. She said she did not want to embarrass anyone. She said she did not want to waste money. She said she did not know what was right anymore. I told her she did not owe anyone a ceremony. I told her she did not owe anyone an image. I told her she only owed herself the truth about how she was being treated. Lena looked at me again, and her face tightened. She asked if I knew something. I told her I heard Grant speaking in a hallway today in a way that was not loving or respectful. I told her I would not repeat it in front of others. I told her I had taken steps to make sure she would not be pressured into a corner. I told her that if she chose to pause, I would stand beside her and she would not stand alone. Lena's breathing changed. It became slower. She looked scared, but there was also relief, like someone had finally said she had a real option. She asked what would happen if she stopped. I told her the grown people in the room would handle their own feelings. I told her the venue had rules and staff. I told her Nora would manage logistics. I told her my job was to protect her, not to protect a schedule. Lena nodded slightly. She said she needed a minute. She asked her friends to give space. Her friends stepped back. One of them handed her water. Another adjusted the dress gently. They were quiet now, like they understood something had changed. I stepped to the side and let Lena breathe. A few moments later, a staff member knocked and said it was almost time. The voice was polite but urgent. The room tightened again. Lena looked at me and asked what I would do. I told her I would do things properly. I told her I would not argue in private corners. I told her I would not let Grant rewrite the story later. I told her I would choose a moment where the truth could not be ignored and where neutral people could respond based on facts. Lena blinked and nodded. Her hands still shook, but her posture became straighter. She looked like she was gathering herself, not for Grant, but for her own dignity. I left the room and walked back toward the ceremony space. The music had shifted slightly, like it was preparing for the main moment. Guests were quiet now. The aisle was clear. Phones rose again, held steady by hands that wanted the perfect memory. I stood near the side, close to where Nora and Ms. Alden could see me. I did not push forward. I did not take the center. I simply positioned myself where I could act without chaos. Grant stood at the front. His shoulders were back. His smile was fixed. Cody and Blake were visible in the front rows, still watching, still ready to react. I looked at the doorway where Lena would appear. I took one slow breath and kept my face calm. I was ready to stop being managed by pressure. I was ready to handle this through the systems they respected. The music inside the ceremony space softened, then paused, like the room itself was holding its breath. People lifted their phones higher. I could see the screens glowing in the dim light. Grant stood at the front, shoulders back, smiling toward the aisle. His friends leaned forward in their seats, ready for a big moment. I did not move fast. I walked to Nora first, then to Ms. Alden. I kept my voice low and asked for 1 minute before the processional. I said it was a safety and conduct issue, and I wanted it handled by policy, not by arguing. Nora looked at Ms. Alden, and Ms. Alden nodded once. Ms. Alden stepped forward and asked the officiant to pause. She said the ceremony would start a few minutes late. A quiet wave of confusion moved through the guests. Grant turned and tried to smile as if it was normal. His eyes, however, went sharp when he saw where I was standing. I asked for the microphone. I did not demand it. I asked like a father who wanted to say something simple. Ms. Alden agreed, but she stayed close, like she was guarding the room from disorder. Nora stood a few steps behind, holding her clipboard like it was a shield. I faced the guests and kept my words short. I said I was Lena's father. I said I had to stop the ceremony because I heard the groom speaking about my daughter in a cruel way minutes before the event. I said this was not a small misunderstanding, and I would not let my daughter be pushed forward by pressure. Grant shook his head and tried to step closer, but Ms. Alden raised a hand and told him to stay where he was. He looked toward his friends like they could fix it with smiles. They did not smile now. Ms. Alden then said she had checked the hallway camera timestamp I gave her earlier. She said staff confirmed the corridor and the moment. She said the venue had clear conduct rules, and the situation met the standard for intervention. She said the venue would not continue the ceremony under those conditions. Grant tried to speak over it, but Ms. Alden did not allow a debate. She said this was not a public argument. She said this was a policy decision. Nora added, in a calm voice, that several last-minute requests had also been made in a way that created pressure and confusion, and those requests were already documented in her planning records. I then explained one more thing, still calm. I said I had funded specific parts of the wedding to support Lena, and those funds were conditional on respectful conduct and good faith. I said those conditions were now triggered, and the support was withdrawn through proper steps. I did not wave papers in the air. I did not need to. I said the planner and venue director would receive formal confirmation through the correct channels today. Lena appeared at the side entrance with her bridesmaid. She was shaking, but she stood straight. She looked at Grant, then looked at me. She walked to my side and took my hand. Her eyes said she understood what I was doing, even if it hurt. Grant's face changed. The confident mask slipped. He looked around the room and realized he could not charm his way out. Miss Alden told him the groom's prep area was now restricted. She told him to collect his personal items with a staff member present and leave the property. She said failure to comply would bring immediate removal by venue security. Cody started to stand, then sat back down when Ms. Alden looked at him. Blake lowered his phone for the first time all day. Ms. Alden took the microphone again and announced the ceremony was halted. The room went silent in a way I will never forget. Grant was guided toward the side exit by staff, his smile gone, his steps uneven, while Lena stayed beside me and the aisle remained empty.